It took only a single sentence from a member of China's elite to shock a studio audience in Europe. Yet, mere minutes later, she would find herself humiliated on the global stage. In recent years, the demographics of tourism in Europe's cultural capitals have undergone a dramatic seismic shift. The American traveler, burdened by a lingering domestic economic depression, has all but vanished. In their place, a wave of visitors from China, wielding overwhelming financial power, has effectively conquered every major destination. It was against this backdrop that a high-ranking female executive from a massive Chinese travel conglomerate appeared on a televised debate. Armed with aggressive data, she triumphantly mocked the decline of the United States. However, the atmosphere in the studio was turned upside down by a gritty French journalist and the raw, uncomfortable truth revealed by a voice from the field. What exactly happened during that broadcast? Below, we detail the stunning account of why the world is now praising the character of the American people, despite their diminished economic standing, and the shocking reasons behind it. By the end, you will understand the true definition of national power: the setup, arrogance, and the algorithm. Relying on crushing economic statistics, the Chinese elite mercilessly exposed America's structural rot, broadcasting its decline to the world. In the heart of Paris, inside the studios of French national television, the primetime flagship debate program, Le Verdict Global, was about to go live. The host was Pierre Dubois, a premier journalist in France with 30 years of experience in the trenches. Sitting across from him was Jane Li, the vice president of European strategy for Global Dragon Travel, China's largest online travel agency. Dressed in Parisian haute couture, her eyes radiated unshakable confidence and ambition. Behind Pierre, a massive screen displayed a shocking chart. It showed a brutal contrast of fates, a blue line plummeting downward and a red line skyrocketing. The blue line represented the trend of American tourists visiting France. From its peak in 2019 to the present year of 2025, the numbers had collapsed by approximately 40%. Conversely, the red line, representing Chinese tourists, had exploded by 250% over the same period. Pierre turned his gaze to his guest. "Ms. Li, how do you analyze this? Let's call it a sea change?" It was the question Jane Li had been waiting for. With a look of unconcealed joy and pride, she began. "Monsieur Dubois, this phenomenon is a historical inevitability. It is the ultimate proof of the economic miracle created by my country, China. As of 2025, China's GDP, calculated by purchasing power parity, is approaching $50 trillion. This means we have significantly surpassed the size of the U.S. economy to take the #1 spot in the world. 40% of the global luxury market is now propped up by Chinese consumers. Just last year, on the Champs-Élysées, a single Chinese family purchased €800, 000 worth of goods in one day. Europe's tourism industry simply cannot function without us. It is no exaggeration to say that we are the ones holding up the European economy." The pivot, the American decline. When her monologue concluded, Pierre Dubois shifted the topic calmly, but deliberately. "So, what is your view on the situation in the United States, which finds itself on the opposite end of the spectrum?" In that instant, Jane Li's expression shifted dramatically. The confident smile vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating gaze of a predator spotting wounded prey. "The United States? Yes, I would be happy to discuss their decline. It serves as the perfect foil to our success." Her voice dripped with thinly veiled contempt as the screen behind her began cycling through charts of American economic data. The U.S. is currently facing a long-term economic contraction rarely seen in history. Specifically, the destruction of the middle class and the cost of living crisis. In the 1990s, the U.S. was the sole superpower. Now, growth has stalled. But more serious is the impoverishment of the average citizen. She gestured at the screen. The real wages of the American worker have been eroding since the peaks of the early 2000s. Inflation has eaten them alive. A trip to Paris, flight, hotel, Dining now costs a family of four from Ohio roughly $15,000. Given the average savings rate and credit card debt in America, that is a pipe dream. It is mathematically impossible for them. She didn't stop there. She mercilessly cut into America's structural wounds. High interest rates and a broken housing market are crushing their citizens. They don't trust their fragile social security system, so they have stopped spending. Her disdain extended even to the bedrock of American society, education. Their public education system is obsolete. It no longer produces innovation. In the knowledge economy, the U.S. is no longer a rival to China. Political polarization, a crumbling infrastructure that looks like the third world, and a healthcare system that bankrupts its own people. She listed the problems facing the United States one by one, as if reading a criminal indictment. Economic stagnation, political chaos, social gridlock. All these factors have combined to rob Americans of the energy to travel abroad. Their disappearance from the world stage is the inevitable result of a terminal decline. When Jane Lee finished, the studio fell into a heavy silence. Her logic was impeccable, her rhetoric supported by hard data. It seemed irrefutable. The counterattack, the confidential dossier. However, Pierre Du Bois did not lose his composure. He looked down quietly at a thick folder on his desk. A counterattack, designed to reveal the human truth hidden behind the cold numbers, was about to begin. Pierre opened the dossier. The cover read, Confidential Report 2025, Deep Psychographic Survey of Tourism Professionals in 7 Major European Cities. Ms. Lee, Pierre began in a steady baritone. Thank you for that fascinating insight. Indeed, China's growth is remarkable and the spending figures are staggering. His voice carried a steely intent. However, can the value of tourism truly be measured only by the size of a credit card transaction? Jane Lee looked wary. For the first time, she felt a flicker of unease at Pierre's calm. Pierre held up the document to the audience. Our investigative team spent the last 6 months conducting a comprehensive field survey in Europe's primary tourist hubs. The goal was to collect the unfiltered voices of those working on the front lines, guides, concierges, servers. We gathered sworn testimony from 327 professionals across Paris, Rome, London, Madrid, and 3 other cities. Jane Lee frowned. Wait a moment. What kind of survey is this? Is the methodology biased? Is it credible? She tried to cut him off, but Pierre was ready. We adhered to strict standards of objectivity. The subjects were chosen randomly. The interview team consisted of native speakers of Mandarin, English, and French to eliminate language barriers. And to address your concern about bias. Pierre paused for effect. The survey included numerous staff of Asian descent. Furthermore, at the start of the survey, many workers expressed admiration for China's economic power. They had no negative bias initially. Pierre pulled out a new sheet. Here is the interesting part. Out of 327 people, 298 of them, that is 91%, provided almost identical testimony. Statistically, that is a landslide. And the content of this testimony, Pierre said, looking Jane in the eye, presents a reality that is diametrically opposed to the welcome you claim to buy with your money. Jane's face paled. Her confidence was fracturing. Let's look at a specific example, Pierre said. This is Philippe Martin, a veteran guide at the Louvre Museum for over 15 years. He is a specialist in Asian tours. Pierre signaled the control room. Roll the tape. The testimony, the ugly reality. On the giant studio screen, against the backdrop of the Louvre's majestic corridors, a middle-aged man with a weary expression began to speak. I started specializing in Chinese tour groups in 2015, Philippe Martin said, his voice heavy. At first, we all welcomed the surge. We heard about the money. We had huge expectations. But after actually leading these groups, my opinion did a 180-degree turn. In my first month, I dealt with more problems than in my entire previous career. The biggest headache is the complete lack of discipline. If I say meet at 9 a.m., maybe half are there by 9:30. When I ask why, they feel no guilt. I was eating. I was shopping. The concept of group cohesion is non-existent. Jane Lee couldn't help but interrupt. Those are individual habits. You cannot generalize an entire nation. Pierre silenced her with a raised hand. The video continued. Even when I give safety instructions, they ignore them. The Louvre has restricted areas to protect the art. Yet, to get the perfect selfie, they hop over the barriers without hesitation. When I tell them in Mandarin, "It is dangerous, please stop," they argue back, "We paid good money." Didn't we? It's fine. They simply do not listen. Philippe looked exhausted on screen. And the noise. My God, the noise. They shout to each other in the Hall of Antiquities. They destroy the atmosphere for everyone else. I get complaints constantly from other tourists. Just the other day, an elderly German couple scolded them, asking if they had no respect for art. And the photos. Taking flash photography of the Mona Lisa, then arguing with security when told to stop. It's the same in the restaurants, Philippe sighed. Food on the floor, tables left in shambles. It feels like a battlefield after they leave. We have a saying among the guides now. The money is good, but the mental cost is too high. Hearing these raw, vivid accounts, Jane Lee was visibly shaken. She scrambled for a rebuttal, but found none. The contrast, the American surprise. Pierre Dubois then played his ace. Actually, Pierre said, Mr. Martin shared another story. The day after being mentally drained by a difficult group, he was assigned to lead a group of Americans. Jane Lee stiffened. She knew what was coming. A comparison that would be sharp, cruel, and illuminating. On screen, Philippe Martin took a deep breath, his eyes softening as he looked into the distance. It was a day I will never forget. I was dreading it, honestly. I thought, great, another group from a superpower, probably loud, probably entitled. I walked to the meeting point with lead in my shoes. The meeting time was 9 a.m. I arrived at 8:55. And I saw something incredible. The American group, 25 people, were all there, waiting, quietly. They weren't shouting, they were speaking in hushed tones, mindful of the other tourists. An older gentleman, the group leader, stepped forward and, in very broken but sincere French, said, Monsieur Martin, we are honored to meet you. Philippe's eyes glistened. That greeting. It washed away the exhaustion of the previous day. And their behavior? We took the metro. They naturally formed a line. They stood to the side to let locals pass. On the train, they gave up their seats to the elderly. They were aware of their space. In the museum, they stepped back to let others see the art. They obeyed every no photography sign. They were there to learn. He continued to the lunch scene. Before eating, they paused. They thanked the servers for every dish. Merci, thank you. When they finished, they stacked their plates. They folded their napkins. The waiter came to me and said, Philippe, I have never had a group this polite. But the moment that broke me, Philippe said, his voice trembling, was at the end of the tour. An elderly woman from the group handed me a handwritten note. It was in English, but she had tried to write, thank you in French at the bottom. It read, thank you for showing us your beautiful country. We know America isn't what it used to be, but seeing this history gives us hope. God bless you. I cried, Philippe admitted. The day before, I had customers who treated me like a servant because they had money. The Americans. They didn't have the flashiest clothes, and I know the exchange rate is hurting them, but they gave me something money can't buy, respect. It made me think, Philippe concluded. What is the true value of tourism? Is it the GDP of the visitor's country? Or is it gratitude and humanity? The verdict. The video faded to black. The studio was dead silent. Jane Lee was speechless. Her face was drained of color, her hands trembling slightly. The arrogance was gone. The testimony had transcended cultural differences and struck at the core of human character. Pierre Dubois leaned forward, delivering the final blow not with malice, but with gravity. This demonstrates a value that the purchasing power of the yuan cannot measure. You cannot act like a king simply because your country is rich. This report proves to the world that dignity, respect, and class are commodities that cannot be bought. The Americans, Pierre continued, may be struggling. They may be facing a twilight of their economic dominance. But in that struggle, they've found a grace that commands the respect of the world. They listen. They learn. They respect the local culture. Ms. Lee, traveling is not just an act of consumption. It is not just moving money from one bank account to another. It is a human exchange. A wealthy nation with no class will never receive true respect from the international community. The broadcast ended, but the shockwave traveled instantly around the globe. It wasn't just a debate about tourism etiquette. It was a fundamental question about what constitutes national power. The United States may have lost the economic momentum of its golden age. But in the behavior of its people, in their humility, their respect for others, and their gratitude, the world saw a different kind of strength. A truly respected nation is not necessarily the one with the highest GDP. It is the one whose citizens are welcomed back, not because of what is in their wallets, but